You're not
No, I don't know.
or my draft.
Maybe I wanted to get something on my phone while I was reading.
Let's see.
Bobby.
Where did they on?
Oh, yeah, he did respond. I just didn't, it's in passing. So you'll be on March, and then we'll ask Brad to talk in May. That will be good. And actually, that's perfect timing in May. Hopefully trails will be coming up again. Yeah, board chair Jim Whaley,
Yeah, it was.
back in May had said that he wanted to.
Stephanie, I said,
have
I think any information.
Yeah.
have representation. from
It
departments like
was-
parks and transportation. You're going to enjoy for the first few meetings of this year.
It was
Actually, we like that. It's good to know what's going on in like
Oh, yeah, for sure.
all the different like parks and trails and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
and Stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I love seeing
Well, it'll be
the new.
what information I should say.
I mean, I wanted to be in
No.
the meeting. see
The
what's going
ADA trail
on.
that they did
So
for
in a nutshell,
Yeah,
showed them the new software that we got for the.
Yeah,
program.
which I think that,
Walk them
and
through
Brad
some
will talk
scenarios
about
of
it
what we
when he
can-
gets to come present,
can't do with
but I
that.
think that they have it fully installed and they're.
Had some discussions and basically they want us to go back,
These probably,
look at
right,
every
they use
school.
decomposed
do 1,000
granite
feet
and
within every
for
school,
the board trail,
see what,
I think so.
when they laid it
we
down,
fixed
yeah, to see how that holds
what
up
gaps are there.
over winter.
Yeah.
And look at.
I know that there were problems with
pedestrian
the,
paths from
with washouts on the Mount
Hospital
Helena
down
Trail, actually got installed, which was tragic.
With what?
The Mount Helena Trail,
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him,
Sidewalks and blah, blah,
poor
blah.
guy.
It varies the decomposed granite where you get it, and I know, I think on the Mount Helena one,
Part of that.
it was a little bit coarser, and they put it down, that kind of.
No,
fix, I
it
think,
was
that
just
our
more
company
like
did
infrastructure. Well,
They did
just
about that,
what
yeah.
needs to be
And so,
brought up to ADA compliant. and
I think when they did the Ford Trail, they got the more compactable stuff.
We only got one, we
It's
had,
got play in it, so it
we only got one
compacts a little
complaint
better.
Oh, nice.
last weekend.
I'll be
Oh, good.
So it's not gonna
Have
go.
you been going around? town?
And also less likely
You
to
know
walk
there's
down.
more than one.
Yeah.
place that show, you know
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
But nobody complains. Right.
Yeah, I'll
You know
I'll
who
let
does it?
Brad speak to that though more specifically, cause I don't wanna.
Not-
Just speak.
Thunder?
Well, I don't wanna
the one by my
miss-
house. The one with the
Speak on
trash.
something and
Oh,
give you incorrect information.
Often they don't show.
Is coming today, isn't he, Ellie?
I haven't heard otherwise, have you?
I mean, I haven't.
Have not heard otherwise, don't see him online. We have Bobby, Debbie,
Well, I'm
Jeannie,
pretty much across.
and Gina was on, but
Oh.
I see we've lost Gina.
Okay.
Um,
I hadn't heard otherwise from Jim. I haven't been in touch with him.
Thought he was supposed to.
just a minute, I'm trying to make sure everyone who's.
You guys got some action out there, huh, David? Plowing action?
Right,
Yeah, a little bit.
he might be, and it's only 3 minutes after.
I mean, one of our plows,
No, not him.
it's different than our other plows. Because we thought it was
Yeah,
kind of
very
one kind, not one of the two. That broken down.
Oh, really? So how long have you been in your position as a factor?
I'm sure there was a flaw in there, but
Brought it out.
yep.
Brought it to the surface.
ADA compliance responsibility.
Yeah, it does,
Get to roll off onto.
That's what we had.
Seated across.
Our
from
Suburban.
the shed.
The heater
on
went,
her
the
plate.
heater went cycle
She's.
this
kind of
weekend.
thankful with housing.
and my wife wanted me to look at it.
Closing
I'm
hours
like,
for the
well,
week.
if I had a shop, I would look at it,
That being.
but I'm not touching anything in this weather because I'll just break more stuff.
It is,
Trying to
but I
look.
need to learn this as
Then
well,
I am
so
gonna
as long as you all have.
No, it might
with me.
be.
I will appreciate it.
That's the only thing I can think of.
So,
And what was your name?
This is the only time.
My name.
I got it.
You know, I'm not
Okay.
sure.
I think I was
honestly
at
have never
the
seen that before.
Civic Center.
Okay.
Training
But,
with,
we do have copies of the agenda.
Oh, I got it.
Okay. But, oh, yeah, and that's not good. It's just gonna be always.
Because there's not much up on those upper limit yet.
Material.
Okay.
So this is my first of the
They
88.
said they've had 55 inches of snow this season. I'm like, really? Really?
So what a long time for me.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even think you can divide that in half and get, how much we've got.
Just haven't had a meeting since he was appointed, so.
I was jumping with somebody that kept getting emails from April about the, this move, we're gonna cancel this and postpone this meeting, you know, we're playing the next one, same thing. I was like,
I think July, we had no staff,
Mhm.
and May was the last meeting, we barely had staff, because I was in Philly.
And I was having surgery that day,
oh gee.
so that was fun. So Chris, our director, he ran the meeting.
And I think I had started the week before or something.
Mhm.
Yes.
So, to those to those committee members who are online, we do ask that you start your camera. It's city policy that if, you are a board or committee member, that you are on camera on Zoom. And we're just gonna wait a few more minutes for Jim to get here.
We believe he's attending, but if not, Gina, you will get to run the meeting, Madam Vice Chair.
Hopefully she can hear you.
Yeah.
Cause we've been having problems with this immersive where I can see them, but they can't hear us or vice
Oh.
versa.
Is anyone having any trouble hearing us or seeing us?
You can hear.
Nope, all good on my end.
Everybody's wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Just wanted to make sure.
I got it right, David. Got it done right.
I guess a blessing and a
I
curse.
follow the instructions and I still use.
Sometimes you have to restart the computer a couple of times.
Restart first.
Did you ever watch the show IT Crowd?
Huh?
Did you ever watch the show IT Crowd?
Uh-oh.
No. It's probably just me in this room. No.
I've heard of it, but I've never watched
I think it's really funny.
it. I've heard it's hilarious.
It's kind of inappropriate 20 years later, but it's still really good. But it's like teenagers who always just say, have you tried turning it off and on again? As soon as they pick up the phone, that's all that they say.
Mhm. It's
How many times have you restarted before you called me?
Hey Gina, if you can hear us, can you possibly unmute for a second just to confirm that you're able to interact with us? Oh,
I'm here.
muted.
I just don't have the greatest service.
Gina, we cannot hear you. Just a minute and let me see what is going on with our audio. Go ahead and again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Let me try a different set of speakers here. This is really odd. Go ahead and try again, Gina.
All right.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Let me see if I can't turn that down just a little bit. There we go.
Thanks, Gina. Appreciate it. I know you've seen the tech in this room, so I know you know it's a delight.
Gotta have an IT expert to run the meetings anymore.
I know.
I feel like I have to learn a whole new skill set, all of this.
Well, Gina, since Jim hasn't yet arrived, I don't know if he is or is not actually able to make it today. You're welcome to kick off the meeting.
We do have a quorum.
You do. So is there a motion to go over minutes, or how do you start the meeting? I don't have a playbook. I've never ran a meeting.
So Gina, if you just want to start with introductions and then we'll go to the minutes.
Okay. So if everyone can introduce themselves, I don't have the best of service either, so if we get disconnected, I don't know how long it'll take me to get back on. So I'm not gonna turn on my video because I don't have the greatest service.
That's okay.
So Gina is our vice chair of this committee. Do you want to go to Bobby next?
Here, present.
And Debbie, joining us from the comfort of home today.
Yeah, my car wouldn't start today.
Maybe that's the problem Jim's having. Um, And then we have Jacob in the room. So that gives us 5 members of the committee present and a quorum. So we'll go around the table and staff can introduce themselves.
I'm Ellie Ray. I'm senior planner with the city.
David Knopke, the Transportation Systems Director.
George McCauley, Potter.
Craig Morrow with Parks Department.
Hi, I'm Ann Pichette. I am the housing coordinator for the city of Helena, and on the side also a Potter, but not like him. I'm not that good, ever.
And I'm April Sparks. I'm the admin for the city community development department and the staff liaison for the committee. So Gina, if you want to ask if there's any discussion about the minutes from May 16th.
Is there any discussion from May 16th?
Appears to be none, Gina. Oh,
Anyone have anything to, any changes, anything to the May 16th minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
I
The minutes are approved. So we'll go on to the second item. Here, let me pull that up for Ellie.
yes. So since the meeting in May, between then and now, we have not received in writing any complaints for the city. And that is simply that.
you need to change the date on this.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I
Oh.
do. Well, I will correct that for the record. Thank you. Jeez.
We were
Fun.
trying to get things out as quickly as possible last week. It was a very full. So we will make sure that gets changed. Thank you, Debbie.
So I have a question
Yes,
as
Gina.
a citizen at large. I sent pictures and wrote an email about Jackson Street and the accessible parking and how difficult it is to access and utilize. What happens to those kind of complaints?
So in that particular instance, Gina, I responded to you and I tried calling you to get additional details on what the issue was, and I never heard a response from you. And there was not really anything for me to go off of to understand what the issue was that you were trying to enumerate.
Oh, because I've been talking about Jackson Street for years now and how narrow it is and how it's difficult to use, specialized equipment on that. And then where some of the accessible parking signage is, like there's big dips, kind of like a driveway right there on Jackson Street where the arcade building is on the backside.
Sure.
And there's how many parking accessible parking spots on Jackson.
Very conveniently, we do have Director Kanopki here, so I can ask Dave if he wishes to speak at all. And, you know, I would just preface it, obviously understanding that Jackson Street is it was plotted as a very narrow street to begin with. So functionally, I appreciate that it's tricky to make it fully compliant, and that there are areas on the west side of the street with the sidewalks there that
Even with the parking garages that were built by the city, they're not accessible. Like I can't utilize those. I have to cross traffic and there's no, I'd have to go to the end of the street. It's just, I'm just wondering what the rationale of putting so many accessible spots on Jackson, and then up on Cruz Avenue, there's like 0. And that's a wide street and that has, you know, parking. I know it doesn't have the greatest access to businesses, but I'm just wondering, you know, how to give better access to that area, because we have vocational rehabilitation, which is a state office in the arcade building, and it's incredibly difficult for people to get to.
So Gina, I can't tell you how many exact spaces are along Jackson. I can tell you that there's accessible parking within the Jackson Street parking garage, and that there's a marked crosswalk from the west side of Jackson there. But I
Can you get full-size vehicles in that garage? Because it looks really narrow. It looks like it's a tight fit.
So just, Gina, really quickly, to clarify, are you talking about the Jackson Street garage that's on the east side of the street, or are you talking about the one that has the access into the arcade building with that top deck that's between the walking mall and the west side of Jackson?
Both. I've tried to use both, and I parked at the one up above on Jackson Street, and it was very treacherous. It was not safe at all. The above one, like you have to come down an incline that's in traffic. It didn't work. The one across the street that probably has a crosswalk, like it just seems like it's such a narrow fit for a big full-size van to get in there and navigate.
Gina, I don't know what the height of your van is, but I just pulled up the street view, and the overhead clearance for the Jackson parking garage on the east side of Jackson is 7 foot 10 inches.
Okay.
And as far as the medical arts building, I can have, you know, parking look into that, but I don't remember how many of those spots are reserved for the staff and how many spots are open for the public. So I'd have to get back to the committee on that.
Yeah, I would never use that again. Yeah, you can give us the details on it, what the specs are, but I didn't feel safe using that at all.
Thank you, Gina. I appreciate you clarifying the issues, plural, I guess.
Well, and I just wonder, since this is such a complaint-driven system, and like the fact that I took the time to email, like that wasn't even acknowledged, and it wasn't documented at all. And I think that if somebody makes the effort to call or email, that we have a responsibility and to do due diligence to make note of that, even if it's not resolved, because I think it gives an inaccurate replication of what's really going on in the city of Helena. I think that there's complaints that have made, and I've been making them consistently for 5 years. And we have canceled meetings because there's no complaints. And I'm just, wondering how many people have, attempted to make a complaint, and then there's no documentation of it at all.
Gina, just to clarify, I did respond to your email regarding the Jackson Street parking garage on November 14th, and then I didn't get another response back from you to specifically requesting that you clarify what the issue was.
Okay, but we have a document that says no complaints were filed. And I'm just wondering how many other people didn't get back to you that maybe have a disability and email's really hard for them.
Nobody else has contacted me in writing with any complaints about city facilities or services.
Can I make a comment?
And Craig wants to share a comment too from
I'll
Park.
just say, if complaints or comments come through our city source process, then that's a permanent record of that, I think. So that might be a better way to go.
I couldn't access that. Like, I've tried to find it on the internet, and I even called April and asked her if she knew how to do it. And I asked, if we still have that process, and I'm having a difficult time. It used to be on the city app, and I used to upload pictures and stuff like that. I can't even find it now. So I think, checking in with the public about, educating how to use this, because I'm a vice chair and I used to use it really successful, and I haven't been able to use it for quite a while, like over a year, and I've inquired about it, and I thought we did away with it.
Gina, I would say if you have questions about it in the future, to call me, since I'm the one that started the app and now it resides in the PIOs. But the app is still functioning. It hasn't changed. I mean, hasn't changed for a couple of years now in appearance. I just walked through with George, George McCauley, on how to do that here right before the meeting. And I'd be more than happy to do the same with you or anyone else that needs that assistance.
And Gina, just to clarify too, in my email response on November 14th, I did also outline the process that's formally stipulated in the resolution that establishes this board and talks about the city's grievance procedures with the ADA, about how you have to put it in writing to me in a letter or an email for me to act on it. The stuff that goes into the My Helena app and gets put through to David's team as a complaint doesn't necessarily rise to coming to me as a formal complaint that needs addressing. So if you do have a complaint that you wish to have go through the ADA grievance process, it has to come to me in writing or to Chris.
That's really confusing, and it sounds misleading to the public. Like, we're telling them that this app is what they need to do. But then even with an email, because I've emailed you and that didn't even make it all the way through.
No, like I said,
I think we need to have a better process that goes all the way through, because you're expecting the public to know that they can use the app, and that if they want to do a formal complaint, it has to be an email like that. I don't know that that's stipulated in the app. Like, I've never heard that said. I don't recall that ever being said, that, it needed to come as a formal email. So, like, what's the even point of having the app if it has to be a formal complaint to you?
I can let Dave speak to the app itself, but I'm just enumerating the grievance process that was established in the 1990s with the city.
Well, I think we should revisit that and maybe change it, because it just sounds outdated, and ineffective. Like,
We very well may be, Gina, because as you might recall from a year and a half ago when George was chair, one of his last actions was to move forward a recommendation to reconsider how we're handling enforcement. So as part of that effort, which is still ongoing, I would foresee that probably how we're handling the grievance procedures, maybe that could be getting changed, but I can't speak right now to what that actually functionally will look like.
well, I think as a citizen and as a vice chair that we need to make that better, because I'm not even able to go through your process
Okay,
effectively. And if I'm having trouble, I can only imagine that other people are struggling, because I know people have tried, they've talked to me about it, and I'm like, well, did you call the city? And I'm just wondering if I first line of defense, because I usually get directed to April, that maybe we could have some education, or whoever answers these ADA calls, wherever it gets, that they're maybe able to help guide the public better.
okay, well, we'll look into it. And for the record, I haven't received, apart from your emails that I tried to follow up with you on and your phone calls, I never received any from any other members of the community, just as an FYI.
This is Debbie, and I agree with Gina. This is, I think, real arbitrary of how they have to do it. I used to work for the state, and if any employee got a phone call with a complaint, it was up to the employee to write it up and put whatever information they had. I think you're making it far too difficult. All these truly are complaints just because they're not doing it in the right way. They're still complaints, and we should be looking into it.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I think if anything rose to being something that was outside of Dave's ability to administer through his own department, that if something were needing to go through the grievance process, ADA grievance process, he would be directing those complaints to myself and Director Brink. We haven't had any such instances.
Not that I recall in the recently.
So, but we can always work better on our internal coordination. So, we can talk to Dave more about that offline and figure out how to coordinate some of these things as they arise.
I think I'd like to make a recommendation, Ellie, that from this point forward, that if anybody calls, or April, anybody calls, emails, that we date it, document it, and bring it to this committee, whether it goes forward or not. Just like, over at the housing authority and stuff. I think that we should be, listening to what people have to say. And I know that I'm not alone, and that that people want to feel heard.
Sure. And just for the record, I did follow up regarding so to clarify for everybody on the call, for those that may have forgotten, the city only has jurisdiction over those complaints that actually pertain to our own facilities and services under Title II of the ADA. Private property such as the housing authority is not within our jurisdiction, but I did speak to their executive director and mentioned the situation, Gina. And I don't know if you talked to him or other staff over at the housing authority.
And this is April, I was just going to state, Gina, just for the record, when we do get phone calls from people with complaints, if it's not directly related to a city facility or service, we do have a list of people that we refer them to, who may be able to help them resolve whatever issue they do have. Because again, we are limited to city services and facilities.
Well, when I make those calls and inquiries, I've never been referred to any other agency, entity. And I think if we have those known, that, I don't know, are those public? Like, is that a resource that we give out to people?
Most of the entities that we typically refer folks to are, I believe, listed on the city's ADA page. I think I made a conscious effort to put a lot of those out there, like Disability Rights Montana, like Milk. I will say, and I don't mean this to sound funny, but a lot of the complaints we actually get are for places outside of even the city of Helena or Lewis and Clark County. Last week I got one for a complaint about a bar in Anaconda. So there, yeah, I know. It's all over the place sometimes. And we try to direct those as best we can.
Maybe somebody from Helena.
I don't know.
In many cases,
And so out of curiosity, for the county, Lewis and Clark County, where do those complaints go?
Those need to be directed to the HR department at Lewis and Clark County. I think Kenny Gross, is that her last name?
I don't know.
I apologize, Gina. I think that
Okay.
it's Kenny in the county HR office that deals with those these days.
and Gina, just as Ellie had said, on the city webpage, the ADA page on it, there is a list of state and local resources with links to all of the resources that we refer people to.
Yeah, a lot of them, it's, you know, landlord tenant issues and things of that nature that we hear about.
So those resources are public.
Great.
That being said, Gina, are you willing to move along to the next regular item?
Sure.
Okay, well, we have Craig Marr with us from the Parks Department, who is going to give an update on some of the activities of the Parks Department and projects that are in the pipeline, at least for his side of that department. And in handful of months' time, just as a heads up, we'll have Brad Langsetter join us to tell us about open lands. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Yeah, as Ellie said, I'll just give you a little overview of some of the activities that we do in the parks program. I'll try not to get into too much detail and bore everybody, but as Ellie said, this is kind of focused on the park maintenance department, and under park maintenance, we have the urban forestry department, and we have the recreation and aquatics department. So the pool, Hayes Kids programs, the other recreation programs we do, those are all under park maintenance umbrella. So we're responsible for the upkeep and management of over 35 public access sites. Those are including parks, sports fields, the memorial pool. We do maintenance in the pedestrian mall, and we operate over 70 irrigation systems, maintain over 175 acres of turf, and we have 14 playgrounds that we maintain, and we inspect those on a monthly basis for any vandalism or problems. We have a certified playground safety inspector on our staff now. And like I said, we do monthly inspections of all of our playgrounds. And that includes the accessible surfacing too. A lot of our playgrounds have the wood chips under them for the surfacing, but it's technically they're certified wood chips, and technically they are ADA accessible if you maintain them properly and install them properly. And part of that's kind of wetting them down and not compacting them, but getting them to kind of lay flat. The theory is you're supposed to be able to roll over them with a wheelchair or, you know, walk over them easily. But then if somebody falls, they also have that impact cushion to protect kids and other people from getting hurt. We do get a lot of vandalism, graffiti, and broken parts on those playgrounds. So it's kind of a constant maintenance issue. For this time of year, of course, we're doing snow removal and snow and ice mitigation. We take care of over 20 miles of shared use trails and sidewalks. So all of our parks, when our parks are built, they all have a sidewalk around them, whether there's a sidewalk to connect to or not. So we go out and clear those from snow and ice, and we really pay particular close attention to the ramps on the intersections and corners. And because typically we'll use some kind of equipment to do the main snow removal, but our guys will take a shovel and a broom with them to hand clear those ramps so that they're free and clear. Of course, it's always a challenge when it's an ongoing snowstorm and you know, the street guys come by and do their work, and then we do our work, and we have to come back and do it again sometimes. But we try to do a good job on those. So we take care of the Benton Avenue Trail, the Custer Avenue Trail that goes all along Custer. There's a trail along Washington Street, and then the Centennial Trail. We do the snow removal on all of those sections. And then we also do the pedestrian mall snow removal down there. And then, of course, we have Memorial Pool in the summertime, and we do there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in the pool as far as water quality, balancing the chemicals, maintaining the chlorine feeders, pumps, filters, other infrastructure. We've had some issues related to accessibility with the big pool deck. We've had some big cracks where it's heaved. And I think it was last year we have a company we use, I think they're out of Utah. They come up with a big grinder, and they did a bunch of grinding for us on the deck to try to get that back into compliance. We have Kendrick Field. We have Kendrick Field, the big stadium. Of course, that was built in 1935, so it has lots of accessibility issues. We're kind of chipping away at them as we go. Of course, we had our 2015 transition plan, which identified a lot of issues at Kendrick Legion and our other facilities, and we've just been kind of trying to chip away at those over time when we have the money to do it. But like I said, it's a 1935 construction, so that has that was before a lot of the awareness came about for ADA. The warming house, we have the ice rink and warming house going on this time of year. We also have ice rinks at Lincoln and Cunningham parks. They're all really popular. The warming house we don't really use it for a warming house so much with the ice rink anymore, because with COVID, we weren't allowing people in there, and the restrooms are not technically accessible. They're a little tight. The stalls are a little tight. So one of our projects we're looking at is kind of redoing the warming house and paying close attention to the restrooms and maybe how those accessible from the outside too, from the ice rink side and from the inside. So we use the warming house for the K's Kids program in the summer too. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but that's a cooperative program with K McKenna Youth Foundation, and they fund that program, and then we administer it. I think we had about 80 kids a week last year, so that's a good program for the kids in the community, and another reason why we need to upgrade that facility. Other maintenance we do is asphalt. We do some parking areas, striping, sealing, signage. Some of our capital projects, like I said, we're going to be looking at the warming house. I know we put in for a big chunk of funding to actually do some work down there, but that didn't go through. But we have some funding to do a kind of a study and the architect's rendering of what we might be able to do down there. One of our most recent successful capital projects was Cherry Park Playground. That was our newest playground that we've built, and that has the poured in place surfacing, which is really nice. That's our only playground that has that instead of the wood chips. It's kind of a rubber surfacing, and it's really firm for wheelchairs and people to walk on, and then it also provides a really good cushion if people were to fall on that. But we haven't really done a lot of new projects. We're kind of in this cycle where we're replacing what we have and trying to upgrade what we have. And that's what we're doing at Memorial Park. We're just upgrading the playground that was there. And that was an old wooden playground. The wood preservative that was used on it wasn't probably the proper kind that was supposed to be used. So that wood kind of degraded quicker than it should have. And now we're replacing that with an up-to-date playground. And I think people are really going to like it. It's pretty cool. It's got a big fire tower structure on it and stuff. And that whole playground should be a lot more accessible than it was. You used to have to go all the way around through the one gate and then try to get across the wood chips to the far end where the swings and stuff were. So we're changing up the entrances on that. And we're still kind of in some of the planning phase on the accessible routes to get in and out of there. And that should be done in the springtime, I would think. Then we redid the Barney tennis courts, the Barney basketball court. We've got a new playground at Leopocha Park. And like I said, we're working on the playground at Memorial. We have our staff fabricated and designed some new picnic shelters for Memorial Park. And those will each have a little accessible route to them, and they're on a concrete pad for access. And then we do a lot of turf management. We have, irrigation system. We have some wells in our parks now where we're trying to get off of the city water, which is better for the vegetation, and it saves us using the treated city water, saves us a little bit of money. We're mowing 5 days a week, about 7 hours a day in the summertime. Do some aerating, top dressing, overseeding, fertilizing, and then of course we do some weed control. Not a lot of weed control, but we do some mechanical weed control as far as pulling. We do some chemical and a lot of mowing. Some of our challenges, related to ADA especially, are like topography of some of our parks. Like a good example is Constitution Park in the sidewalk that goes along 6th Avenue there. It's on that steep hill, and during the transition plan it was identified as a problem, but we really can't fix that slope.
It's not a problem anymore.
What's that?
It's not a problem anymore.
No.
No, per ProAg, the sidewalks can be the same grade as the adjacent streets.
Well, in the transition plan, they suggested that the grade of the street be adjusted. So anyways, that's the challenge. Some of our sites, it's just not possible to make them completely accessible. One of our other challenges, of course, is funding. We come up with these lists of projects and good ideas, and if we don't get the funding, we just can't do them. We compete with fire and police for our funding, so that's a challenge. The walking mall is a challenge. I know we've had some issues with some uneven surfaces and changes in levels of surface in the walking mall, and that's something we're going to try to address this our upcoming budget cycle. We're going to at least bring it forward and see if we can get some funding. We have some sections of brick in there, and you hit them with a snow plow and it pops out a brick, and then it just is an ongoing thing. They become loose, and it's really challenging to get bricks back placed properly and to keep them in place. So we might be looking at some other kind of surface in there. I mean, if you looked at the walking mall, it's a mishmash of different surfaces through there. So it'd be nice to be able to get that shored up at least for changes in level, basically. Yeah, and then if you guys have any questions, I mean, that's kind of what we have going on. We didn't get funded for a lot of projects last year. We got some equipment, and then we did some of the projects I mentioned. One of our big upcoming projects will be, which is past due, is the Civic Center tennis courts are due to be completely rebuilt. A lot of times we can get away with just resurfacing the tennis court. And even that's expensive nowadays, but that one has gotten where the base, the asphalt base is just all cracked. So every time you resurface it, the cracks come back up through and crack the new surfacing. So it's kind of a waste of money to put more surfacing out there on there without fixing the base of that. So we're gonna be trying to fund that next year. Then, you know, if you guys ever have any comments, concerns, or complaints about park related stuff or any of the stuff I just talked about, the multi-use trails, feel free to give me a call, send an email, and go through Ellie if you want. I want to make it official. And then with that, I'll answer any questions if anybody has any.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
That's it.
No, I'm just making a comment. That's a heck of a lot. Thanks.
We do have
Gonna
a,
ask
don't realize what we vote all we do. So thanks.
Go ahead, Gina.
that out with the hard surface. I'm just curious, how do you decide on what accessible equipment to go with? There's so many options.
In a playground, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, we work with the manufacturer and they have like the, you know, nationwide expertise on kind of what goes together. We did get the fire tower was a custom made piece of equipment, but it meets all the standards for ADA. And I mean, every piece of equipment we purchase now meets requirements of ADA for playgrounds. So
yeah, and ADA is minimal guidelines. Like those are minimum. Those aren't those are bare basics. So do you ever consult with the disabled community about that?
we have in the past, yes. Yep.
Okay, and on your parks committee, do you have a disabled representative, a member of the community that sits on your parks committee?
I don't think we currently do, but we've talked about that. And we have, you know, there's a city representative, a county representative. We have a representative from Lincoln because it covers the whole, it's a consolidated city county parks board. So it's the city and the county. So it covers all the way up to Augusta, Lincoln. And I'm not exactly sure how they end up. I mean, the representatives have to apply for those positions. So I don't know if we've haven't had an applicant in the past with a disability, but I'm sure would be open to it and be a good idea.
Yeah, I think I've been inquiring about that the last year or two, to be on that committee. And I guess, you know, with how extensive our parks are and stuff, not to have a disabled member of our community on that committee, I think is very unfortunate. I think that's something that could be improved. I think that needs to be improved. I believe Missoula, Bozeman, like all these other communities, they actively have a disabled person on their parks committee. And adaptive recreation is really what's needed. And I believe I've been in contact with you about Memorial Park and our other parks. And I guess I would just like to see more integration of including the disabled community because they're the ones who use it. And I've gone to Memorial Park and haven't been able to use adaptive equipment there, even with the help of 2 able-bodied people. And the placement of the equipment is not inclusive. And I keep bringing that to the attention of, you know, how are we going to do this? And I still want to see, you know, more. Like we're making big purchases and we're not even, I don't know. I think this committee should be consulted. I think that we have experts and that, you know, if you're making big purchases and funding is a big deal, like we better make sure that that equipment is usable by our people with disabilities and multiple disabilities, not just people in wheelchairs, but people with visual and hearing and sensory things.
Yeah.
So I am,
agree.
I would like this committee to be consulted. Like I'd like to be more involved if I'm not personally, at least this committee, because I see equipment that isn't usable and I would like that to improve.
Yeah, I agree, Gina. A prime example of that was, you know, Vans helped us fundraise for that wheelchair swing. And everybody thought that was a great idea, but it's really a failed piece of equipment that really shouldn't have ever been installed. And we should have been consulted with that up front too, because Vans just went and fundraised for that without really even talking to us about it. So, and then having somebody on the parks board, I think that's a great idea. And of course, we're behind the times of other cities, it seems like.
Tina, I would just say, if you are interested in a seat on the City County Parks Board, to be in contact with the city clerk's office, and they could likely notify you when there is a vacancy on that board, because all board appointments go through the city clerk's office, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
And one other thing to note, if at any point in time, like for instance, Craig, since you're working on some of the design elements still for the playground at Memorial, if you wish, you're not required, but if you wish to present those plans to this board for further comment on it, you're more than welcome to anytime. I know, Gina, in the past, you've been really great about reaching out to the Parks Department to offer your services, to just sort of talk to them about whatever they're proposing with equipment, with trails, whatever the case might be. So I know that you're a big fan of our parks and open lands, and I'm sure Craig would welcome your expertise and your input.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. And then, yeah, that's a good idea. We can, then we have a big project, we can bring it to this group and see if you guys have comments. And that reminds me, I just saw in the paper that the Benton Avenue crossing is out for comment from the MDT. So if you guys want to comment on that, that's where Benton Avenue Trail comes up to the railroad tracks there by Batch Fields and Carroll. And then it's gonna cross to head west down towards Henderson and that.
It crosses, just gonna make the connection between the Centennial Trail and the where they ended on the east side there across the tracks.
And
So-
and that brings up a great point, because some of these trails are connected, and our city, we have Montana Avenue and Malfunction Junction. And not even 2 weeks ago, I witnessed a pedestrian come not even inches from being hit from a car. And I'm just wondering, you know, cycling, mountain biking, how can we improve some of these access to the trails? Because I want to use my adaptive bike to get to the trails, and I have to cross, you know, Montana Avenue, and there's the railroad tracks, and I'm hoping, you know, to be able to see if I can connect that way, because isn't there a trail that goes from Memorial Park and under the Viaduct?
Yeah, it's part of Centennial Trail. It goes from Centennial Park.
Towards
and then it goes towards Kmart or Walmart out that way.
But it stops at National, because that's where the funding basically stopped when that trail was being put in. There is, we're looking at working with MDT to design a crossing at Montana. There would be a pedestrian actuated, some type of signal there to cross at Bozeman to Argyle. But again, you know, there's always the challenge of we have certain streets in the city that are not the city's purview. They are MDTs, and we have to work through them to get their approvals. And if it's a funding issue to go through MDT, then we have to get in their funding cycles. As far as, you know, connecting some of these other trails, you know, we're still pursuing. So the existing easement from the railroad that connects Centennial Trail, basically from Benton all the way across to Joslin, is an old easement that in it says no improvements can be made. And so we can't improve that trail. So we've been working for the last 5-6 years on a new easement with the railroad to move that trail to basically the southern edge of their right away there, to pull that away from the tracks as far as possible. One of the requirements from the railroad through that easement is that gets all fenced off as we improve the trail, and we abandon our old easement. Unfortunately, the timing with MRL and BNSF, now they're asking for a little bit more, or a lot more actually, up front on that, and we've been working with them to try to, you know, at least get something moving on that. We've done all the easement documents. We've done worked with the Public Works and Railroad to you know, get the typical section so that we have a trail that meets what we want as a shared use path, but also meets their requirements. We're just there's just a few road bumps that we're trying to get over, and unfortunately the progress is slow.
Okay, and where do we stand with e-bikes and our committee recommendation to the Parks Department in regard to e-bikes?
You know, Gina, I'm not sure. Was that on the open lands, on the trails, or on the shared use paths? I guess I hadn't seen that proposal.
I think it was a policy that sort of writ large.
Yeah, so I think
So-
if it's in conjunction, I mean, if it's with your disability that you need an e-bike or whatever, I think those are already allowed on the
I think they
trails.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just general public isn't allowed to use e-bikes on those trails.
Gina, are you talking about the recommendation that was discussed at the meeting in May of last year?
Yes, and the recommendation of our committee and e-bikes and promoting a user-friendly community where
So-
you know, my big question is I am curious, what's the logic for banning e-bikes? Because
So Gina, if I recall correctly, after that meeting, you all had a subcommittee meeting. And there was, because I worked with you guys on that, and we fine-tuned that recommendation and we sent it on to Jim to sign as the chair, and I don't think we ever got that back from him to move it forward anywhere, but we'll circle
okay,
back and figure out what happened there.
I think he might have actually come in to sign it in person at one point, and I think it might have gone to, as the process mandates, that it go to the city manager's office. And then from there, he, in this instance, was gonna work through the city attorney's office. I think, Gina, that it might be with the city attorney's office, much like the enforcement conversation in part is with the city attorney's office right now. So we can double check on that for you.
And we'll see where it is in the process.
But presently, I don't think that people that need to use those are disallowed from doing so on city trails.
just the general public is disallowed from doing that.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And I just think that creates a climate where disabled people with e-bikes, like we get a lot of not favorable feedback for our adaptive vehicles and our equipment. And I'm just, you know, I guess with the Parks Department here, I'm curious what the logic is to ban e-bikes for the general public, because that affects the disabled community as well.
Yes, Gina, I can speak a little bit to some of that, but they're not banned on all the shared use trails around town. So all the paved trails, Custer, Benton, Henderson, they're not banned on those trails. So it's just the open land, single track trails up in the hills that, and I don't know if they're technically banned. That was a commission decision, not a Parks Department decision. I think that was Halliday.
They were
wasn't it?
classified as vehicles,
Yeah.
is how, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and so it wasn't a Parks Department decision to ban them. It was a combination of the laws, the current laws, and
the different classes of the.
and the classes of e-bikes. There's three classes of e-bikes. So it's very complicated, and we're not the only ones dealing with it. It's a nationwide issue, everywhere. And the ADA thing comes up all the time. I have a hip replacement, so I might be one of those people advocating for e-bikes here pretty soon, so. But I think too, you'll see it's not really enforced. I haven't heard of any. I don't think you can't write a citation for it because there's not an ordinance or a law, and there's no enforcement wing for e-bikes right now in the city. So, yeah, that's my comments.
Get your hip replacement.
What's that?
Okay.
I'll get you.
Enforcement worker.
Give you a badge and everything, Craig.
Well, and I apologize with, I didn't hear all of what you said. My system froze, but I got the last part of it. So thank you for that.
Sure. Yeah. And if you ever want to talk more about the e-bike issue, Brad would be a good one to talk to, our open lands manager, or Doug, our director. But like I said, we're overall in the city, you have lots of places you can ride them, more than you can't ride them. So.
Right. And I'm excited to, try more of the trails out and stuff to see what, improvements we can make for more adaptive equipment to be out there utilizing the open spaces. So I'm really excited about what the Parks Department has going. And I just encourage you to consult with our community. So thank you for your time and all that you do.
Thank you.
Gina, when it thaws out, just a plug for Brad. I think he would love some input on the DeFord Trail when everything is, cleared of snow and ice after winter. So if you get out there and experience it, let Brad know what you think.
Definitely.
Any
Can we
other
get
questions for Craig?
Can we get a copy of what was sent to the city? Because we met on that subcommittee, but I never did see the final product.
Yeah, we'll chase that up. I'm 99, and I apologize because I don't expect you to recall this. I was on the other side of the country when that meeting was being held, and I know that the subcommittee met again, actually, when I was once again on the other side of the country in July, if I'm not mistaken. So, we'll chase it up. I'm fairly certain, Debbie, that Jim did physically come in and sign it, and it got moved on through the channels. So we'll check and see where that is, and we can provide that to you via email after this meeting, April. And similarly too, it's linked on the city's ADA website too, but I think it's always beneficial to remind people of the resolution again that established this committee and sets forth the grievance procedure. So April, if we can provide a link to that too, just so everybody can see the jurisdiction that this committee has and the composition of it and what the outlined grievance procedure is and has been for, well, oh goodness, nearly 20 years.
I'll send out links to it all in an email.
Thank you, April.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie. And thank you for helping out you and Gina on that little subcommittee.
And I think I do have that, that draft that's possibly, I think I might have that in my email to send out. So.
Yeah. And if Jim did not sign it, we will get on that. But I'm
Okay.
fairly certain he did.
Any other questions for Craig while we've got him?
If not, you can call me or email anytime.
Wonderful.
So we'll move on to public comment, and I know George had something that he wanted to bring up in the public comment.
Well, thanks for giving me a few minutes. I just wanted to, most of y'all don't know that I was on the committee for, I don't know how many years, a lot, and enjoyed it and was the chair for a long time. I've been doing this, being an advocate for the disabled community since 1970, not from here, just in my whole life. So, and I remain an advocate and somebody who's trying to make changes, working within the city. I mean, there's a part of me that's over here with some disabled citizens, but there's a part of me that tries to do this through the city. So I think it might have been in June that I called Tim. Whatever the meeting was, I said to Tim, can we get together and have a little talk? So out of that came these monthly meetings that Joel Peden, who used to be with Montana Independent Living Project, then went to Centers for Independent Living, and now he's with the county. And Joel is a disabled citizen in an electric wheelchair. And I've also encouraged Matt Mays from DOT to come to the meetings. So we met monthly, and then I think the last meeting, we waited a couple of months because there was nothing really, we didn't have to meet every month. But Tim's been very kind with his time about meeting with us. So I recently sent an email, and I thought I had Jim Whaley's email address and his phone number. I don't have either. So I sent an email to Tim, but I sent a copy to Gina, to Ellie, and David is in on the meetings, but I sent a copy to David. And Ellie, if it's appropriate, I'm asking you, could you just send your committee a copy of that email I sent to Tim?
Yes.
Okay.
We can do that.
Okay. And I just want to say, so the reason I'm here is there isn't one specific thing. Like I don't have a complaint about one specific thing. What Joel and I are trying to get the city to do, and we've been unable to do that, is to make ADA concerns. And I'm not talking about the law. I'm not talking about the transition plan or the prioritization plan, both of which I was a part of. It's not that, it's the general scope of things that we feel, and I'm going to step on toes, I realize that, but we feel as though the city has not made disabled issues and the disabled community a priority. So I mention that to Tim quite often. So in the email, and I really would like y'all to get it, it just sort of outlines how we feel about the meetings. And primarily, it wasn't my intention to have the meetings to be a gripe session. It was much more important. Griping doesn't get us anywhere. It was, here's what we think based on the disabled community's responses where we're falling short. How can we fix that? Give us some examples. And Joel and I have been told for months, we're working on things, but we don't have any examples. So in the email, I asked for, if you've got examples, let us have it. And just so you'll know, I've been making these kinds of complaints since the time of Greta Diggy. And that that comes before most of y'all, I think. And if some of y'all, well, I mean, in the minutes, you'll know that my last act as the ADA chair was to get a support to, my proposal was to have the city commission give the code enforcement officers be able to fine people who cause infractions such as sidewalk and street things. And as you probably know, when I went across the city with this, most people didn't know that the code enforcement officers have no power. The city has no power to make anybody do anything. They can only ask. This is not a reflection. I hope this is being recorded. This is not a reflection on the department that David Konopke runs. David's department does a great job, but they do the job that the city and the commission allows them to do. So that request to allow code enforcement officers to issue fines, it is now 1 year and 9 months in the city attorney's office. We were accused in our meetings of wanting a timeline. Well, we always say, we don't have a timeline of a week, but we think a year and 9 months is a little bit long. So what I'm requesting is, Ellie Ray will send you all the email. Read it. That's the overview of what we think we're not getting from the city. You can call me, you can write me, you can come to my house if you have some input. But this is an ongoing thing with Joel, Matt, Tim, etc., and David. And we're fundamentally disappointed. So that steps on a lot of toes. I'm sorry. It steps on a lot of toes. But I've been doing this as a volunteer now for almost 60 years. So it's not new to me to be thought of being a smartass. So I did receive a copy of the letter from Teresa Ortega. She also was in support of code enforcement officers fining people. Elway, if you remember, maybe last year, I said, did the ADA committee's, let's call it, agreement of support go to the city, but I never received any kind of letter from them. I don't know how that went, but my understanding is that support information is with our city attorney, along with Teresa. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But I mean, I never got that, so I never know what they said. Well, I mean, so that's my spiel. Thank y'all for letting me say this. And Joel and I are very compliant when we have these meetings. But what we feel is that we shouldn't be apologetic when we say the disabled community does not think they're being represented by the city. And I had somebody come in our last meeting who is from the DPHHS Blind and Low Vision Services. Her statement to Tim was, we think we're being ignored. Her statement to me was, I don't mean anything to the city. Those are two separate statements, but I hear this all the time. So we have the ADA committee. I believe the ADA committee it's a narrow scope. In my tenure, I tried to enlarge that scope. Nobody was interested. So anyway, thank y'all. You can call me, write me, come visit me, discuss things with me, but thank you for your time. And if you have a hankering, you might want to just send a little letter, email, whatever you do, text, whatever it is, to Tim about this 1 year and 9 months timeline for trying to decide a simple thing. Can we let our code enforcement officers have some power and enforce the rules that we have? That may or may not help, but hopefully it will. Thank you all very much.
I thought for a time there, Greta was able to collect money Because the theory was she was gonna pay for her position. I know for snow removal,
Yeah,
she
I
was.
remember
able to-
that. Yeah.
It wasn't a writing tickets, but
Snow removal is the only one on the books right now that technically we can fine for. But for like trip hazards
so that's not.
or garden hoses, leaving the trash can in the sidewalk multiple times, there's
Nothing.
Sorry, before I forget, and I apologize in case there are other people that wish to provide public comment or comment further on what George has already shared. Gina, I just wanted to circle back. The Parks Board, the Consolidated Parks Board apparently does have an opening for a citizen, a city appointee right now. So if you have an interest in that, please, like April was mentioning, contact Danae's office.
I would say the only caveat, Gina, is if you decide to apply for the Parks Board, then you will have to resign your position on the ADA Compliance Committee.
That's correct.
Because you can only serve on one board at a time.
That's right.
Sorry, people are welcome to go back to public comment. I apologize. I just knew I'd forget. Are there any further public comments? I think everybody else that's on the call isn't board member, so probably not. Are there any member communications generally, proposals for the next agenda? Gina, I know that you had expressed an interest to, I think, have a discussion revision of not a revision, I'm sorry. Just go over once again as a committee with Dave, talk about snow removal policies for the city at our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, well, conveniently, Dave is already planning to attend that meeting to present on transportation systems matters. So Dave, would you be willing to have that discussion again at our next meeting?
Yeah.
As part of that? Thank you. We will tee that up for next month, or sorry, March's agenda.
And I'm curious, we meet 6 times a year, is that right?
Yes,
And last year, we only met twice. And,
That's correct, Gina.
okay, and so hopefully this year, I think George, statement, you know, I think that this committee can do a better job of at least meeting for public comment and not be based on complaints. Whether we meet or not, it seems like there's a lot going on, and to have
Gina, I don't know if you need, hey
Gina.
Gina, you've
Yep.
been cutting in and out. I'm really sorry.
oh, my service, I told you, is not good. So anyway, thank you.
Of course.
Any other member communications?
Along those, Jacob, along those. Along what Jeannie was saying about that, is that something we can? Is that a city policy? Is that a committee policy that we only meet due to complaints, if there are any? Is that something we can change as a committee?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, Jacob. So to that point, section 3 of resolution 19473 that I've mentioned a couple times in the course of this meeting sets forth what the ADA Compliance Committee is responsible for. And chiefly it's that they may review requests for a reconsideration of complaints forwarded by the ADA coordinator, may make determinations as to the validity of complaints, and may provide descriptions of the resolution of those grievances that have been appealed. And they also may make priorities for making may recommend priorities, I'm sorry, for making structural changes to public facilities, offer suggestions on how to achieve program accessibility, and review and make recommendations on employment practices and so forth. So the scope of what this committee is tasked with is pretty narrowly defined in that regard. And I know that this has been something that George, for example, has talked about for a number of years, and that we internally at the city, at the staff level, have been trying to figure out how better, with regard to George's enforcement discussion in large part, make changes to that. And then structurally within the same resolution, it, believe it does set forth, I know Dave just scanned over this, but I believe that there's something in here that speaks to the regularity about how and when we have the meetings. In large part, one of the reasons that we didn't meet last year is we didn't have a directive from a chair or otherwise, like we do right now, to have staff come forward to talk about, you know, what their respective departments are doing, which I think we should be doing more routinely anyway, to be honest. And I'm not trying to make excuses, but at this time last year, the planning department or planning division, which is responsible for staffing this particular committee, had 50% staffing. And we had no staff, we had no complaints, we had no items to bring forward, brought forward by the chair or otherwise. So there was no functional utility in trying to convene a meeting to no end, basically. So we opted not to in a number of cases. But we do, for the first 3 meetings of this year and probably beyond that, have items lined up for the board to review. Whether we can take on reviewing or having meetings more regularly than that is a different discussion, but we can certainly look into it. And I think just generally, because of George's final recommendation before he departed the committee a year and 9 months ago to try and change enforcement and everything. Again, as has been mentioned, it's still an ongoing conversation about how we want to address enforcement for the city and deal with that internally, just with regard to staffing and everything else. So while that's still under consideration, we're trying to, what I'm trying to drive at is that with regard to all of that, at some point, we're likely to amend this resolution or maybe scrap it and rewrite it related to the committee and maybe what its function is, and if there are to be any alterations, as we've also discussed today, to the grievance procedure, what that might look like. But I mean, none of these resolutions and ordinances adopted by the city are static documents. Everything is a living and breathing thing. So at some point we can elect to change it, and we're just still in the sort of planning phase to figure out what that might look like internally. I don't know, Dave, if you'd add anything else to that. I mean, it's just still very much ongoing, I feel like.
I just add real quick, because I don't know how long my service is going to last, that the fact that the city has turned away major events due to the lack of accessibility, and they've gone to other communities in the state to host these events, I think would hopefully give the city and this committee more presence and more take it at heart, because, you know, we're losing big gigs because of our lack of accessibility in the capital city of Montana. And I think we can do more. So anyway, thanks.
If you ever have individuals that reach out to you, Gina, about things like that, you can let them contact us. To our knowledge, based on the people sitting in this room who represent probably the departments that would be issuing permits for those events, none of us have heard of that happening. And I actually had the ADA coordinator for Butte Silverbow talk to us about how wonderfully accessible he thinks downtown Helena is and how much he loves coming here for Pride and stuff. So, but all we can do is assist where we're asked. So if somebody reaches out to us about those events.
It was the tourism board in Helena reached out to me, a couple of tourist places, and notified me that, you know, they had major concerns of how serious the city of Helena was taking accessibility, and the fact that the Civic Center is our main venue, and how, you know, it might meet code, but it really lacks accessibility. And if there's discussion with something being planned out at the fairgrounds for a convention center. I think accessibility, because I'm seeing new structures being built, big structures that were completed after 2017 that lack accessibility in our community and surrounding community. And I just like to note that going forward, that accessibility is really important. And I think of universal design is what we should be talking about. And that the ADA, the minimum guidelines, you know, those are good, but universal design is really where it's at, because we need to design for everybody and pretty much everything that we do, whether it's roads, sidewalks, you know, to have a developer come in and only make half the sidewalk accessible is just unacceptable. And I want that to stop from this point going forward. And this committee, like, our scope is so narrow, it's so restrictive, and it's not really taken seriously. Like, we're not given any clout, or our expertise is not utilized. And I think the city would benefit from diversity and inclusion and having more people with disabilities involved in the day-to-day action, being hired and consulted to make sure that we do things right instead of going back and trying to fix it.
Thanks, Gina. We might be reaching out to Andrea Opitz, I guess, at the T-bid. Yes, George.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Was two things. Oh, when you're, redoing the, let's say the
Resolution.
resolution, it would be great for y'all to, talk to a number of people from the disabled community. I don't know if y'all do that. I mean, I know we have our own experts here, but it would be great to ask them, because, there's a different view there. And, the other thing was, with respect to what Gina's talking about tourism, a local organization who was involved in this is about that same issue, involved in the art walk, the winter one, the winter art walk, whatever that thing's called, the fall walk. And they used the trolley. And so I got grilled about, because, people know I've been involved in this, so I get asked questions all the time. They had complaints that the sidewalks downtown, the shoveling is not done that well. We can't get around, having trouble getting in and out of the trolley. All I'm doing is passing that on from a group that said, can you tell this to the city? I always encourage people to call y'all or to email you, whatever it is. But I hear these all the time.
Are you becoming the My Helena app, George? Is that what?
Now I know how to use it.
You can't leave or go anywhere, George. Your job is now the My Helena app.
Yeah.
You're the conduit.
But their point was, if we want to be part of this, the city needs to make sure that with that trolley, our riders can get around. That's all I know about the situation. I'm passing it on, and I'm doing a bad job of only telling you a little bit.
Which trolley?
I'm gonna tell you, it was the trolley that went from
We must have been running.
that went to Omerta. The new studio.
Down in the by the distillery.
That's it. Yeah.
It's an art gallery makerspace,
Yeah.
studio space.
Gallery studio space.
Down in the Great Northern.
Yeah.
Jeannie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I work for St. Peter's Health, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we're working on getting all of our parking lots resurfaced. And we actually reached out to Joel Peden. We had him come into the hospital and did kind of walk around with him around all the parking lots to find out what things would be helpful for him. And he was a great resource. We learned so much from just that half-hour time that we spent with him. So, I agree that involving people like that ahead of time is really a smart thing to do. So I would just encourage, if you guys don't do that, that you maybe involve people that can give you their perspective before you start working on the project and invest a lot of money and time on things that you may need to redo at some point in the future.
Thank you, Jeannie. Also, this might be my first time meeting you virtually or otherwise, so.
Yes, this is my first meeting.
Well, welcome and thank you for attending today.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think, George, just to your point about that event, in case people come out of the woodwork talking about it, since there's another one scheduled for February 2nd. By the way, everybody go to Art Walk on February 2nd. Not that it's a city event, but but that one, I think specifically because of what was happening with Downtown Helena Incorporated was being managed by the downtown businesses themselves directly. So we didn't have any control over it.
And another comment on that too is the businesses down there are supposed to take care of the sidewalks in front of their own
Which is
business.
part of what Dave can discuss in March.
But you know that I know that, and you know that's a problem.
But I know the city should be enforcing it as well, or pushing.
You want to say that again, please? Let's record this.
It is being recorded.
I hope that part about what I said about David's department is real clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any
She's
other,
my buddy.
any other proposals for the next agenda? So it is 3 o'clock. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
A second. Debbie, did you second the motion to adjourn?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you,
All right,
Debbie.
thank you, Debbie. And we are adjourned.
Thank
So
you all
thank you,
so much.
everyone.
We appreciate your time today.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in
Thank
March.
you. Bye. Thank you.
Take care.